All right, welcome everybody to our conversation today on digital transformation. My name is Brad Barth. I am Chief Product Officer for InEight, and really lucky to have a couple of great folks to talk about digital transformation with us here today from a couple of InEight customers. So we'll give them a chance to introduce themselves here first before we get into our question and answers here. But guys, thanks for being with us here today. Let's start with you, Damien. So Damien Kelleher, Chief Commercial Officer for Decmil. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your role, as well as maybe what Decmil's up to? What kind of business is Decmil?
Yeah, so I joined the organization in October 18. As you pointed out, Chief Commercial Officer. Decmil as a business operates 40 years plus. We've been in the industry operating over infrastructure, construction, energy in terms of the sectors in which we operate, diverse in terms of multidiscipline organization. And in terms of my role, I've got custody of the pre-contracts through to operational support.
Sounds like that'll keep you busy.
Yes.
Perfect. Thanks for being here. Steven Ciencio, Project Controls Director from Chemex. Same thing. Maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and Chemex.
So, been 20 years in the industry, primarily in project controls and project management. Unlike most of my colleagues here at Chemex, I actually started in the mining industry. In projects throughout South America and Canada, and made my way back home and now in the oil and gas industry. Chemex is a full-service EPC, EPCM with a lot of modular experience, primarily within the renewables, which has been very strong lately. And we've been around for about not as long as Decmil, but about, I think, 40 years, give or take, in different roles and in different positions. But yeah, it's been interesting times.
And Stephen, I've heard some of your colleagues refer to Chemex as a boutique EPC. What does that mean to you guys?
It's been a different approach when we started with the Chemex, the boutique approach to things is we cater more directly towards the needs of our clients, to the extent of we work closely together with the clients, helping them understand exactly what is that they need, especially in the renewables realm, right? Whereas your legacy projects within, upstream or even within mining, where the understanding is there, there's a lot of new technology and also integrating the client with the project within project controls. What is exactly project controls, right? What are the stages of engineering that we have to go through from inception all the way into conclusion? What are they looking for in terms of the maturity of the process, of the maturity of the engineering phases that we go through, right? And we integrate our clients a lot more than usually your legacy engineering companies, your big engineering companies would integrate, right? Our clients are not just another project. They're we bring them in as part of the team as well.
Active participants in the projects. Huh?
Correct.
Well, that seems to be a trend, right? I mean, and speaking of trends, I guess we certainly InEight, as we do our capital projects outlook, we do a survey out to just recently up to 300 capital project owners and contractors, EPCs, kind of the whole mix. One of the trends we certainly see is the increased, I guess, advancement, acceleration of digital transformation in our industry, and really just adoption of technology as a whole. Used to be our industry kind of had a little bit of a bad mark in terms of our willingness to adopt technology. And like you guys have been in this industry for about 30 years now, and for sure can see a major change even going back just a few years ago. But my question for you guys, I'll start with you, Damien. One of the things that came out of that survey that we just recently did was that digital transformation has now actually risen to the top in terms of the number one opportunity for both owners and contractors, that mark that as kind of the top business opportunity, even more so than the economy and other things. So that digital transformation, I think, has a tendency to mean different things to different people. So, Damien, I'm kind of curious, especially with your background, what does digital transformation mean to you, and kind of how have you guys approached that from Decmil's perspective?
So from a Decmil perspective, what it means for us to move into digital transformation was more, I'll use the term, a common platform, standardization. So when I arrived in the business, and I share this example, being that it was sort of the catalyst to move us into that digital transformation space, is, we look at, say, document control across the business. We operate in multiple states, and effectively it's fair to say when we did the reconciliation and looking at where we were as a business at that point in time, we were adopting 9 separate systems in respect to document control. Now, a number of them are influenced by clients, and that will always be the case. But what we looked at in terms of our digital transformation journey is, how do we get a uniformed approach across the business, and try and leverage that common approach, the Decmil way, if I can call it that, utilizing a common platform, of which, in fairness, as we've evolved on this journey, we've seen a greater uptake from clients in the same platform, in InEight. So we're now finding that there's this, not only is it a common internal platform, but effectively a lot of our clients are adopting the system, which is meaning, as a business, we can have sort of a common approach, a Decmil way, which is then being sort of catering for the client's needs in terms of their transformation. So effectively, that's the way that we sort of see that digital transformation, everything from document control to BIM management, and having that common platform across the business.
So it sounds like there's a good amount of kind of standardization and consistency in getting that business process kind of digitized. Huh? Sometimes we hear, it's hey, a digital transformation, we're already doing things digitally. We're not, we don't have much left in pen and paper, but it's really more about standardization and business processes. Would you agree?
Yeah. From a Decmil perspective, that's quite right. Yes, you get the added benefit that you can use the iPad in the field. You can really automate the process and eliminate that administration burden, if you want to call it that. But no, for us as a business, it was more about how can we adapt digitally to get that common user platform, but ensuring in deploying the system, we could do it in a way with the fact that InEight is modular in its approach, do it in a way that, having been established for 40 plus years, we could do it in a progressive basis, rather than sort of adopting a system at day one and changing everything historically. We can sort of not only go on a transformational journey digitally, but we can do it in a fashion that sees us progressively doing it without sort of hindering the business in terms of future growth.
Got it. I'm curious about the 9 document control systems. So we'll come back to that one. I want to probe a little more on that one. But
okay.
But before we get too far into it, Stephen, how about you? I mean, digital transformation, and certainly in your role there as project controls director, I would imagine you get faced with a lot of systems, a lot of requests, I would imagine, from the folks on your team looking at, hey, we should be using this technology. What does digital transformation mean to you, and kind of where are you guys at on that journey, I guess, let's say?
I think, to me, the most important thing, the word that comes to mind, is silos, right? Project controls or project services, however you would define it, used to be, like Damien put, quite wisely, you would have document controls working in its environment with its software, and then you have your planners and schedulers working with P6, and then, whatever project controls tool you would use, and those tools would never connect, right? They would sometimes say they would, but it would be so burdensome that you never use. So generating your dashboards and trying to control information was really time consuming, and it was really prone to mistakes because it was a lot of interactions between different tools. And I think that what InEight brings, and we're heavily invested in InEight because of that, is, again, like Damien said, the modularization approach that InEight has enabled us to have a proper repository, not only for the project controls, but for cost, for our earned value management, and then transitioning that into reporting our dashboard to the clients, which is really important. And I think it's safe to say that, InEight is truly on-demand, true time information, where you don't necessarily get with any other platform out there. And so my team has been highly involved throughout the different disciplines, and it's been very easy for us to have full visibility of not only project per project, but throughout the whole portfolio of projects that we have currently in Chemex.
Well, I like what each of you touched on, because I think there's some really key elements there around digital transformation, business process, standardization, consistency, but then also that, it sounds like, I think, Stephen, one of the things you're recognizing there and seeing is a digital approach, and a standardized digital approach can connect people together, right? So it's not just connecting the data, it's connecting the roles.
People and processes, right? And you're integrating the whole dynamic of the project. You've got control of all the documentation flowing in and out, so you've got control of that. You've got control of all your cost. We went through the extent of tagging our InEight to our ERP system. So there's communication between disciplines within the project as well as outside within the corporation, where other areas are able to tap into information that they require, and much to InEight's capability of providing that.
So it sounds like you're eliminating some redundant effort then as well. Huh? You're not having
Correct.
to type things into 2 different systems or 3 different systems.
Yes.
Good. So back to you, Damien. Just you mentioned the many document control systems that you were using. We see that kind of thing quite often in terms of whether it's document control or estimating or work planning. Just different systems kind of pop up, and we tend to we tend to want to respond to the business and put technology in place, but sometimes that leads us down a path where all of a sudden we've got a whole bunch of different tools that we're using. Sometimes, as you mentioned, it's out of requirements for particular contracts, but maybe to talk a little bit, Damien, about kind of what led you down this path towards digital transformation, and kind of maybe just touch on, how did you kind of go about getting started on that, and where are you on that journey, do you feel? Are you still early? Are you in the middle of it, or kind of where do you feel like you're at on that journey?
Yeah, no problem. So if I start with the reason why, I sort of I touched on the document control system, and that was one example. Historically, when the business has been operating for some time, and it's made acquisitions along the way, and in that brings again a magnitude of different systems through multiple different regions. But also, one of the things that I experienced when I came was basically the adoption of purpose-built systems. So Decmil as an organization from 2012 onwards basically adopted an approach of building their internal systems to cater for the needs and requirements. And in that, there was nothing wrong with them systems, but the upkeep of them systems and keeping them live, relevant, and basically keeping up with the industries and the sectors that we were operating in, and the difference in requirements, as Stephen said, from daily cost planning on an infrastructure job versus an SMP type of job. The requirements, whilst are similar, they're not necessarily identical. So where we started on arrival, where we did a bit of a look across all of the systems in terms of what we were actually trying to achieve, to ensure that we could have an individual develop within Decmil, but not necessarily be sector focused. So what we had is, and Brad, you touched on it, it is about the people and connecting people. We wanted people that could be trained in the Decmil way, but then put their skill set, whether it be a resources project, infrastructure project, energy project, without the need to adopt multiple different systems and training. So late 2018, early 19, we went out with an RFQ to basically the market to understand the systems that were in place in the market that would allow us to do then three key things. One, develop a common platform, i.e. service all our sectors. Two, lent themselves to a progressive modular approach so that we didn't turn things off and turn it on and flip the organization on its head straight away. And three, as is often the case, basically was cost effective and met the requirements of the business more holistically. So we ran the RFQ process, basically had multiple returns through that process and whittled it down to the InEight software, and made that selection on the basis that actually satisfied a high component of our criteria in terms of what we were looking for. Where we are in deployment, we have been actively engaged with InEight through this process. They've been basically working with Decmil to, I'm going to call it Decmilize the InEight components. So there is a lot of collaboration. There is a lot of modifications that are being made to adapt the system, not wholesale, but the little tweaks and nuances we need for managing industrial agreements and various other things within Australia. And InEight have been fantastic on that journey. Where we are, we're now in multiple stages across the modules. If I take document control, InEight Doc, that's basically throughout the organization. Some are in their infancy, so we've took a progressive approach in rollout for new projects coming online. We're basically adopting the software, the suite in full. Old projects, legacy projects are running off under the old system. And our next big hurdle in terms of an organization is to roll out the InEight estimate, which will then allow us to have the full complement implemented in the business and really yield the fruits of what we're trying to do. And look, that's not been a small journey. We've been at it for 18 months. It's not overnight, but we've adopted an approach of doing it in that progressive, organized and linear fashion to make sure that we've got people coming on that journey rather than disrupting an organization where we've got employees that have been within the business 12 plus years, understand the old way of working. So it really has been a process of change management that sees us where we are, but that's effectively where we are on our digital transformation journey.
Good. That's interesting. So we'll come back to the kind of the implementation and maybe some of the challenges you faced as you're rolling it out. But I want to back up to, you talked about, and you've been there, 3 years? Is that right? 3-4 years now at Decmil?
Yeah, it's just coming up to 3 years. Yes. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
And you mentioned when you got there, you kind of, as you sort of surveyed and sort of, came across the challenges that you've discussed and kind of ventured into this journey. What any kind of lessons learned in terms of just the evaluation stage? So as you went through trying to kind of figure out, hey, who's the right vendor for us to partner with on this digital transformation journey? Any advice you have for other folks out there that might be thinking about kind of going down the same path?
I think the advice would be actually meet and interact. Many times an RFQ for a tender process doesn't lend itself to interaction, but I would say when you actually close the door on the tender and you through that evaluation process, one of the major things that was the tipping scale from Decmil's perspective with InEight was actually meeting with them and properly understanding the advantages and disadvantages and being taken through the system rather than trying to evaluate it on a submission that is, marketing material, whatever you want to call it, but effectively engaging and understanding what you want to achieve and having them discussions was a real difference in terms of how InEight engage with us in that journey.
I think that's a great thing to touch on. You mentioned, kind of the tweaks that you've gone through, whether that's, configuration options or modifications, around the fringes just to make it work the way Decmal works. It's probably important for people to understand that this is it's a big decision, and there's no system out there, I would imagine, that can meet every one of your requirements as you went out and looked at the vendors out there. So I would assume, finding one that's going to work with you that you feel like is going to be a good partner is probably right up there with functionality, I would imagine.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And you're quite right in terms of the modifications. We're not talking wholesale changes, but the way that we capture hours and our industrial agreements work, even in the West Coast to the East Coast, they're very different by nature. So it's just the tweaks we're talking about are more refinements rather than wholesale. But yeah, definitely having the right partner to enable that to occur in a timely fashion and to meet the requirements is critical.
Stephen, back to you. When you went through that evaluation, you kind of decided to, hey, it's time to kind of upgrade our systems and advance along that sort of digital path. Was there kind of similar to, it sounds like what happened at Decmal, similar on your side in terms of there was a moment where we said, hey, we're gonna, it's time for some change. Let's kind of survey our business and look at our requirements, look at the systems we have, and then go out to vendors, or did you do it more kind of sort of piece by piece or business process by business process? How did you guys approach that?
So with ChemX was a little bit different because we didn't have a legacy project controls tool that we were using. We did for scheduling, for planning, for estimating, but it was, like I said, there was nothing integrated, right? So it was a different approach to where, okay, we know what we don't have and we know where we want to be, right? And I think that was the mindset that we had at the time. And like Damien said and pointed out, we had this very similar experience where once we decided to go with InEight, it wasn't just a approach where you would set up the system and, okay, here's a number and good luck. It has been throughout every module that we have implemented in InEight, it has been fully integrated with the InEight team. Whereas ChemX also underwent some tweaking to how we do certain things internally, especially very heavily involved within InEight Estimate. So how we integrate InEight Estimates processes into our own WBS hierarchy and how to evolve that into that in the scheme that makes, that ties into how we use, especially with our other tools, such as our ERP and other estimating tools that we have. And now we're heavily involved with the InEight Estimate. It's quite frankly becoming our go-to tool. The same went with controls, where we evolved from one module to going down to basically all the modules, and now in the final stages of implementing change, the change module. And again, it was, the involvement the InEight team had throughout the whole process. We never felt that we were alone. It was the attention that the team had to what we had to say and how we wanted to do things, and the ability for them to react was impressive. So our experience has been great. It's been an ongoing process, and it's been very positive.
And sounds like you've kind of taken it sort of module at a time, currently focused on estimate. Whether it's InEight related or not, I mean, just looking into the future, what's next for ChemX on that kind of digital transformation journey? What do you see as the big next steps?
I think that what the interesting thing that we've done that it's been very successful in our experience is that not only the integration wasn't only between my team and InEight, was the project management group as well. Just how we approach our projects, where project managers and project engineers have full ownership of their projects. So they're highly involved within the stages of estimating the project or planning the project, putting a schedule together. They at the end of the day, they have full ownership that both project schedule and the cost structure is then transferred to the project, where my team now acts only as oversight. And with that being said, I think that's very important how we approach and how we use the tool. And going back to how the tool enables us to integrate, every aspect of the project, or every group, every discipline within the project, from cost to planning to change to document controls. So our next approach is to fully implement, as we're in final stages now with the change module, and all our projects are already running on this platform.
That's excellent. That's great. Yeah, that modular approach, which I think is another a nice bit of advice in terms of, sort of, you don't have to, I think some people tend to think, well, you got to boil the ocean, right? If we're going to do this thing and bite off a whole bunch of stuff and a lot of change all at once, where, if you can kind of compartmentalize it, but with an eye towards the future, it certainly helps with that change management. Damien, back to you in terms of that change management. I mean, as you were going down this path, either during the evaluation or during implementation, as you started to roll this out at Decmil, what kind of resistance did you run into, or enthusiasm? I guess one or the other, or both. But I mean, there were likely, I'm sure, obstacles you had to get over, kind of organizationally and internally, to get people behind the change, huh?
Yeah, no, quite right, and I think you are right. We did have multiple pockets. We had people who had basically inherited and developed the systems that were being operated historically, and they were not necessarily opposed, but there was a different change management piece to bring them on the journey. Whereas we had people join the organization, within the past 2 years, that had experienced sort of external systems and the knowledge of where we potentially wanted to be. So we had this vast spectrum of, adoption. But I think in all of it, that the hurdles, we never really hit a hurdle. What we always subscribe, and I'm a very strong advocate for, is the way that we've used the genesis of the system is one source of the truth. So single point entry, one source of the truth. And I think through that journey and that promotion, what we've been able to do is get everybody to that point where they actually see the benefit of the system, what we're trying to adopt. And I think you used a good analogy there of boiling the ocean. What we tried to promote to people is we're not necessarily here to boil the ocean, but when it's boiling, this is what it looks like, in terms of really promoting the benefits of the holistic system, right through to, what Stephen said in terms of linking cost, planning, and risk, but more actively, living the experience of how the estimators get the benefit of what has actually occurred on projects being fed back real time. So when they're pricing the next job, they've got, they don't necessarily have to chase the information. We're not trying to avoid people not communicating, but effectively that real-time information means everybody is best placed to do what they need to do when they need to do it. And I think that once we've got that message to land, the adoption in the system is getting better and better.
That's excellent. So it sounds like there's a recognition, and it sounds like you did a great job of kind of painting the picture of here's what that sort of master vision looks like. We're doing this piece, that piece, but when it all comes together, the puzzle gets filled in. Because sometimes people don't really understand, why are we changing this one thing, right? We already do this thing. We have a way to do it. Why are we changing that? And sometimes it's not about that one thing. It's about the benefits to the organization as a whole, right?
Yeah. 100%.
Well, we've focused kind of so far on kind of how the changes and the digital transformation things that InEight has partnered with you on, how they've kind of affected you internally. How has it affected your ability to deliver on your customers' expectations? Damien, will stay with you on that, but I mean, to some degree, I would imagine the evolution that you're going through has been to position yourselves effectively, obviously, to deliver on the requirements your customers and demands your customers are putting on you. Have you seen a change in that?
I think what we've found is it's actually aided from a client perspective transparency. So in our operations, generally speaking, a system or otherwise, we're managing our operations day to day, but through modules such as change and/or planning and/or the schedule risk analysis we're now enabled to do through the system, we can have then more open discussions with clients as to some of the critical decisions, whether that be a design review turnaround or whether that be a direction or an approval to progress with an alternative option. We've been able to adapt and utilize the system to provide a better client solution in that it's ready, it's accessible. We can sit down with them in a room, put the schedule risk analysis on the screen, model a few different scenarios and give a real-time sort of vision as to, well, if we actually fail in approving or making a decision on this by next Tuesday, the program slips a month or comes back a month. So really, we've used it as a more tool for collaboration. That would be the best way I'd sort of say. From my perspective, the client experience has changed. Before, you couldn't necessarily, and Stephen alluded to it well, that you had one system in terms of where we had procurement captured, another system in terms of where direct labor were captured, then you had P6, and never would they meet, whereas now we can jump into one common platform and have that information readily available to take our clients on the journey as we sort of progress through projects.
Well, and that's a great point. And I mentioned at the beginning the survey that we did recognized digital transformation as kind of the greatest opportunity to drive improvement in the industry. And I wasn't surprised to see that coming from contractors. I was a little surprised to see that coming from the owner operator side. But it sounds like maybe, Damien, what you're saying is there is a recognition, maybe more and more, on the because of those interactions that owners are having with organizations like yours, recognizing that the risk is less, we can model things faster, we can make decisions faster, and ultimately that we can move more work through the pipeline, less contingency sitting on the sideline, we can do more investment. I mean, are you seeing that kind of I guess change from the clients you work with in terms of their expectation around what technology can do for them?
Yes, we are. When you look at it as well, post the COVID recovery in Australia, a lot of the clients are adopting alternative procurement models that are more focused on that collaboration, accurate, more appropriate risk allocation and contingency application. So effectively, what we found is that the adoption of this digital transformation is just a way and a tool that they can facilitate that revised procurement model through the works that we're doing. So in a recent example down in Victoria, the client was heavily involved right through the estimate through to the schedule risk analysis. And in fact, a number of the things that the system can now generate were mandatory requirements through that procurement process. Whereas, historically, it was, we want a tender submission in a closed sealed envelope. Now we're working on a 12-week journey with a client using this system as a platform to basically inform how things are procured.
So doing more back and forth, more what ifs, more scenario planning. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, and having history and historical data from which to benchmark those things, I would imagine, is a handy thing as well, to help validate some of the numbers.
Yeah, and look, they benchmark equally as we do. But if we can point to our past two jobs or norms that we're currently achieving, or a job down the road, here's the dashboard of the productivities that we're we're currently achieving for these reasons. It makes for an informed decision-making process rather than a theoretical, and that's what we've really seen the benefit of the system.
Yeah, that drives confidence, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Stephen, your clients, if I understand right, a lot of your customers are private developers, right? That are in that alternative energy space, garnering private investment that funds many of the projects that you guys do. I would imagine there's a unique element to that in terms of making sure that, well, two things. Would I be correct in assuming that maybe some of those private investment, maybe consortiums or individual private investment groups, perhaps don't have a long history of project controls expertise on their side, and are therefore really looking to you and your firm to kind of provide direction and that's. I would like to hear your thoughts on that. But then secondly, are you seeing from the owner operators that you work with a change maybe in what their expectations are around technology and how they collaborate with your firm?
Yeah, I think you're correct. Our clients are becoming, more and more sophisticated, to the point where, they do understand that project controls is a very important requirement. I think that what this tool enables us to do, and we've been very successful both with internal and external clients, is for us to provide our dashboard approach and show them information that helps them helps them make educated decisions in which, okay, so if we know how our indexes are, we can steer this project to the expected outcome, and that comes with the data that's extracted in a dashboard format. One very important component of project controls is reporting, right? And both internally and externally. Internally, where we can show our directors, or the CEO and Cooper, our COO, how our portfolio is reacting to our management and to different stages of the project life cycle, as well as externally to our clients, to where we sit on a biweekly or monthly basis, and we help them steer the project in the way that's been baseline and expected. So we have been seeing more and more of the clients being a little bit more educated to what they want to see, to what they expect to see, which that helps us, especially when we are able to sit with them and use the dashboards that are embedded with InEight, and graphically show them, okay, so here's how your project versus your baseline, and what are we doing in order to get this project to completion.
It's funny how it gives a little more confidence when it's coming through a dashboard than an Excel spreadsheet or a Word document or something like that, right? It implies there's process behind it, which there is, right? So
you can't just put the tool out there, right? There has to be a process in the background and it goes back to our conversation early on, where integration is very important, because once you're showing that information visually in graphical format to your client, he understands that that's pulling from this module or that module, and the integration is there. Like Damien said, we're able to go back to a module and show, okay, so your change management process, here are the changes, and you got your change log, and that's how it's affecting your cost. And the same thing with the schedule, and same thing with plannings and document controls, right? I mean, you have one repository where you can show them the whole process, and goes a long way to build the confidence in your client as well, to go through the next stages, right, as the project matures.
That's perfect. That's music to my ears. I know one of the themes that we've tried to embrace here at InEight, and I think we even used it as a marketing theme at one point, but it's the where did you get that number, right? We want to enable our customers to be able to answer that question, whether it's an estimate or a forecast or any number that people want to understand. Where'd you get that number that you can back up into it? So it might be ending up in a dashboard, but then you can back up from there and see all the way back to what were the assumptions behind those numbers.
Exactly, and you're not going back to just raw data, right? You're transforming that data into information that's to them makes sense, right? And then it makes sense to us as well. So,
And Stephen, staying with you, I mean, we talk about alternative energy and the sort of overall industry that you're in, but I'll give you a chance to maybe brag about one of the projects that you guys have done or are in the middle of doing, and because there's some pretty cool projects, pretty unique projects that you guys get involved in. Tell us about maybe one that jumps out.
yeah, we are actually in partnership and in the midst of a big project, and heavily utilizing InEight, all the modules. We have recently finished one of its first renewable diesel in Yucatan seaboard, and also utilizing InEight controls, and been very successful with it. Like I said, we don't take any projects here that's outside of our project control system, and everything flows through InEight, and everything is controlled through InEight. Um, and the fact that we've been very successful is, talking about a little bit of, how painful change can be sometimes, and how we approach and change the perception of, do I really want to use this? I think that we've been very successful by implementing module by module, by training with the help of InEight on how to best utilize the tool, and including our project team in the process. So all of the project management group are very fluent in InEight. So it's not a dedicated tool to project controls. And I think that's what driving our projects to success. With this recently concluded project, and a major project that we're ongoing right now.
One of the folks on our team, one of my favorite sayings is it talks about democratizing the project controls process, where sometimes you'd look in the past and there'd be two or three experts in the system, whatever the system was, right? But they're the ones that kind of managed all the systems and the data coming in. And have you seen that kind of democratization where more and more people involved in the project are into the details of the system, being able to get their own answers, not waiting for someone to go get them an answer?
Yes, definitely. I'm able now to change my WBS hierarchy, adding or making it functional to a given project without a project manager ever even arguing with me that I don't understand. I have feedback, which it's very welcoming. Where I said, okay, we need to use this process more. It's been a very interesting approach, and it's been very interesting to see the feedback that I'm getting from the project team. I think you put it quite well. It's a democratic approach to all of the process, whereas project controls were really necessarily the most liked group in a project within construction, or if you're in engineering stages, right? Where this shows them a little bit more of what is project control? Why do you need project controls? It gives the project management and the project team a lot more confidence to take on their projects.
Well, it kind of drives that we hear it sometimes described as kind of self-service, right? I'm able to do things that I need to do on the spot. I can get my own answers. I don't have to go through hierarchy to get to where I'm going, or bureaucracy just moves things along. Damien, I mean, maybe on that same topic, I mean, what have you guys seen there at DECBL? I mean, have you seen that same sort of evolution in terms of more people involved in the system, perhaps, than you would otherwise?
Yeah, I think that the biggest summary, and Stephen touched on it there, is that many people didn't actually understand what the answer was. So they were putting information into multiple different systems to get a different response, but didn't actually know what the output was saying. One of the things that we're finding in the adoption through the system, and in particular from a supervisory lead in hand perspective, is that they're getting that real-time productivity data. That means at the end of shift, they know what they've got to do differently the next shift to effectively maintain their forecasts and things like that. Whereas traditionally and historically, the system hasn't really lent itself to generate that real-time information in a simplified format that can basically generate that real-time information to enable change. So we're finding the adoption and uptake is people are still putting the same information in, but they're getting a more user-friendly roadmap in terms of the results at the back end. And that's what we're seeing has sort of led to a greater use of the system on in particular our infrastructure projects where productivity is key.
Gotcha. Well, and speaking of infrastructure projects, so I want to give you the same opportunity. Any particular projects that you want to brag about or highlight that the Decmal's involved in currently?
Oh, look, it's a very hard one. We like to brag about all our projects, but one of the things that we have is that diversity of we've got projects that are EPC through cost reimbursable over multiple different sectors, and I think when you actually look to where we sort of are sort of learning and growing and enhancing is through the use of the software. So, yep, we're doing major road infrastructure projects throughout Australia, in particular, well, Queensland, Victoria, Perth. We've been involved in renewable farms in terms of wind farms, solar, but effectively in terms of the commonality of the platform, we really see that the system we now have can adapt itself to any particular project that we work on.
That is great to hear. So as we're coming down to the home stretch on this, I want to take advantage of while we've got you guys. So I'd like to ask you both, what are, as you look back on kind of where you've been over the last couple of years, let's say, as you've been on this journey, is there something that sticks out at you as either something you would do differently if you were doing it over again, or a piece of advice maybe that for somebody that's kind of following down that path maybe a few years later than you guys started, but any advice or things that major takeaways that you want to call out? Stephen, we'll start with you on that.
I think that if to give an advice would be to really know your project controls or project services, implement a solid system with processes that make sense, processes that work. Communicate and integrate. That's very important and not often done. Where your project, like we spoke earlier on, where you've got team members working in silos and not really communicating. I think that project controls has evolved to a point where we have a lot more knowledge today of what we need to do in order to make a project successful or help a project be successful. And I think that will be my advice is just know what do you need to implement, know your project, know constraints, know your baselines, and integrate your team and work together.
So it's thinking through that business process before you try to digitalize that business process, right?
Yes. Definitely.
Kind of comes first. I think that's a great advice. Sometimes I think people rush to the software and the solution before they really kind of know what are our requirements, what problems are we trying to solve, right? Before we go start implementing.
You need to understand what your pain points are, right? And only when you understand them, you know exactly what you need to implement. What's going to take priority? Yeah. Is it going to be documents? Am I, low in cost? I'm not controlling costs, and I'm overrunning my projects on cost. Is it schedule? So, and I think that if you're successful in knowing your pain points or your constraints, and then applying tools and processes that are inclusive of the whole corporation, I think that's goes a long way for your success. Excellent advice. Damien, over to you. Same question. What
what's a big takeaway from you or advice that you would have for others going down the same path?
Firstly, fully agree with what Stephen outlined there. I think that is critical, understanding where you want to get to before you jump on the journey. I suppose the extension from me with personal learnings is don't underestimate the need for somebody necessarily to act as a project manager. So we've been in and out of this process. The difficulty we all experience are, we still got day jobs. We still have to be in the business and on the business. So we've the learning that I would take away is it would make sense to have a project manager responsible for the deployment of the system, because whilst it's easy to isolate and say one module, that one module may actually talk, to Stephen's point, 3 or 4 different silos in the organization as to information they necessarily need or we need to feed the system, whether that be the finance department through to doc control. And I think the learning that we've taken away, which is not hindered, but definitely slowed down our rollout, is that lack of adoption of a dedicated project manager, which is where we've now moved to. And we're seeing that in doing that, we're already seeing a hockey stick in terms of progress in rolling out the system. So effectively, that would be my addition to what Stephen outlined.
All right. Well, perfect. I can't thank you guys enough for joining us here today on this topic. Like I said, that capital project survey, the global project survey that we've just recently published, indicates that digital transformation is high on really everybody's list as an opportunity to improve in this industry and deliver more projects with less risk. So great advice all the way around for other folks that might be going down this path. And I thank you both for your insights and your wisdom here today, and appreciate you guys joining us.
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you, Brad. Yeah.
And that pretty much wraps it up here from InEight and for today's discussion. So really appreciate everybody joining us here today. That survey that I mentioned is available for download at InEight.com. Like I said, having been in this industry for 30 years or so, I'm always surprised at how surprised I am every time I look at that survey. There's a lot of great data in there and some really good insights in terms of kind of some trends and where the industry is heading. So great reading. Free download for everybody that's participated here today. Hope you guys enjoyed the talk, and thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks, Brad.
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you, guys.